Ever sign one of those online petitions?
Yeah, that's like clicked sign and shared it on your Facebook.
Yeah.
Or maybe got into a little, too heated debate in the comment section about some political thing.
Happens to the best of us.
Right. Well, you're definitely not alone.
This deep dive is all about how, the digital age is kind of shaking up democracy as we know it.
Really interesting stuff.
Yeah, and you guys have sent us some seriously thought-provoking materials for this one.
Could be a good one.
We're talking we've got academic papers.
We've got a whole lecture transcript.
Oh, wow.
Like the works, right?
Yeah.
But don't worry, we're not going to get bogged down on all the jargon and stuff. We're going to cut through all that to bring you the good stuff.
Moments that make you see, the online world in a whole new light.
That's what I like.
Right.
So, buckle up, because we are tackling the big questions today.
Okay.
Like, is democracy, actually facing a crisis?
Can the internet actually empower citizens, or is it all just hype?
And how is all that data, the stuff you generate every time you go online, how's it being used in ways you might not even realize?
Big questions.
Big questions, yeah.
And to help us untangle all of this, I've got our expert here, right?
Ready to untangle.
Now, one of the first things that jumped out from the materials that you guys sent was this idea that democracy might be in a bit of a crisis mode.
Yeah.
What's your take on that?
Well, you're right.
There's a lot of buzz about this potential democratic crisis.
And it's not just alarmist headlines.
Right.
Scholars like, Peter Vertigem, Andrew Chadwick.
Okay.
These guys point to some worrying signs.
Yeah.
Things like declining voter turnout.
The rise of single-issue parties and politics just becoming more about media spend than actual substance,
Okay, so it's not just our imagination. It's these are real trends.
Oh, yeah.
Okay.
But how does the whole digital revolution factor into all of this?
Is the internet the hero? The villain? Somewhere in between? What are we thinking?
Yeah, that's a good question.
It's definitely more complicated than just a simple hero or villain.
Right. Remember all that early internet optimism?
Oh, yeah.
The 90s, right?
Yeah, technology would usher in this era of unprecedented democracy,
Howard Rheingold called it democratizing technology.
Okay.
Right.
Empowering citizens.
Boosting participation.
Leading to more thoughtful decision making.
Yeah, the online public square, right?
Buzzing with rational debate. Everyone's voice heard.
Yeah, exactly.
Sounds pretty idyllic, doesn't it?
I have a feeling it's not quite that simple.
Yeah, you're right.
Reality has a way of being a bit messier than our utopian visions.
Right.
Those hopes haven't completely vanished.
But we're also seeing some downsides.
Okay.
Things like polarization.
Misinformation spreading like wildfire.
And of course, the digital divide.
Where not everyone has that equal access to the technology or even the skills to navigate this complex landscape.
It's we've got all these amazing tools for connection and participation, but also the potential for manipulation and division, right?
Yeah.
Talk about a double-edged sword.
It's double-edged sword.
And this is where it gets really interesting, right?
Okay.
Think about some of the major political events just in the last few years.
Like Brexit, for example.
Oh, yeah.
Or even just all the debates around COVID-19.
Right.
How have you seen these challenges, polarization, misinformation, digital divides? How have they played out in those events?
Yeah, well, think about how those social media algorithms work.
Right.
They kind of trap us in these echo chambers, right?
Yes.
Feeding us information that just confirms what we already believe.
Mm-hmm.
So it's no wonder we're seeing these really stark divisions.
Totally.
In how people interpret the same events.
Yeah, and then there's the whole issue of misinformation.
Huge.
Which online, it's
The wildfire.
it's unbelievable, right?
Yeah.
It's one thing to disagree on opinions,
Right.
but when you can't even agree on basic facts.
Because you're getting your news from completely different sources.
Exactly. Yeah, and who knows?
Who knows, right?
How reliable any of those sources are.
It's how do you even begin to...
Yeah.
It erodes the whole foundation of having an informed debate.
It's almost like you're trying to have a conversation with someone who's speaking a different language.
Yes.
And
if you can't even talk to each other, how are you supposed to bridge these divides?
Right.
Find some kind of common ground.
Yeah, it's tough.
Right.
That's the real challenge here.
Okay, so we've got this potential, crisis of democracy kind of brewing.
Yeah.
And the digital age is playing this, really complex and often, I don't know, contradictory role.
Definitely.
But before we like get too deep into the weeds of all that.
Yeah. I kind of want to zoom out for a second
Okay.
and talk about the media
Okay.
because, you know, they've always been seen as this powerful force
Okay.
in shaping public opinion.
For sure.
But how has their role actually evolved in this whole, like, new digital landscape we're talking about?
Right.
Are they still the watchdogs?
The information providers,
The voice of the people?
like, are they living up to what we expect them to be?
I mean, those are big shoes to fill, right?
And the thing is, the media landscape is like almost unrecognizable from
Totally.
what it was even just a few decades ago.
All right, so before we get into how things have changed,
Well-
remind us, like, what did those traditional roles of the media, what did they actually look like in their, like, you know?
Ideal form.
Okay, so picture this, right?
Okay.
The media, like this fearless watchdog,
Yep.
keeping a close eye on those in power,
Mm-hmm.
sniffing out corruption.
Speaking truth to power,
Think like Watergate,
exact.
right? Like that classic image of journalists as, like, you know, the heroes, right? Bringing down a president.
100%.
Then you've got the media as this, like, neutral information provider,
Okay.
right? Just laying out the facts,
Presenting different sides of an issue.
helping citizens, like, you know, make informed decisions.
Okay. So like presenting like a balanced diet of information.
Yeah, exactly.
So people can like form their own opinions.
Exactly. And then finally,
All
you've
right.
got the media as the voice of the people.
Right.
Oh, wait.
Amplifying the concerns
The hopes, the frustrations, all of it,
of everyday citizens.
giving a platform to those who might not otherwise be heard.
100%. Yeah.
It's a powerful trifecta, you know, when it works,
Right.
at least in theory.
Okay. I see where you're going with this.
In theory, those roles, they sound amazing.
Oh, yeah.
Essential even, I would say, for, like, you know,
Yeah.
a healthy democracy.
But I mean, let's be real.
Things feel way more complicated now.
Oh, absolutely.
Right.
It's like we've gone from a few major news channels to like a million micro channels.
Yes.
Each with their own agenda, their own audience.
And don't even get me started on, like, the algorithms.
Oh, I know.
Right. Like, they're reading our minds, feeding us exactly what they think we want to see,
Yeah.
which isn't always the full picture.
It's true.
The rise of social media has, like, totally fractured the media landscape.
Right.
It's like we're all navigating these echo chambers now,
It's true.
where we're mainly exposed to information that, like, already aligns with our biases.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? It's
Yeah.
a far cry from that neutral information provider we were just talking about.
Totally. And it's not just about like, the sheer volume of information either.
Right.
It's about who controls it.
That's a good point.
Right.
Like, we can't ignore the influence of media conglomerates.
Huge.
Ugh.
These massive corporations that own like huge chunks
Yeah.
of what we read, what we watch, what we listen to.
100%. Yeah.
Yeah.
So, I mean, if you have this handful of companies that are controlling the flow of information,
Right.
can we really even talk about a free and independent press?
Right. Like, where does their responsibility to the public even lie?
Exactly.
When their bottom line is, profits and shareholders and all that.
Yeah, it's almost like we need to redefine what those, like, democratic roles of the media even mean.
In this, like, I don't know, this wild west to the digital age.
Totally.
I think you're right.
Like, we can't rely on those old models anymore
We have to think really critically about
Right.
who has the power
to shape the information that we consume.
and how that influences, like, our democratic processes.
Right.
And this isn't just some abstract academic debate, right?
Yo.
This is affecting all of us.
Exactly. This is real life.
Yeah, this is how we live.
You know, this whole conversation, it reminds me of that concept of the public sphere.
Oh, yeah.
Like, do you think it's even possible in this age of echo chambers and,
Yeah.
like, you know, filter bubbles and all that? Ah, the public sphere, right?
That's a term that'll, like, get academics all fired up,
Oh, I bet.
But Jürgen Habermas, who's like a big name in media studies,
Okay.
he argued that, like, the ideal public sphere,
Was this space for, like, open, rational discourse?
free from the influence of power or money.
Which, let's be real, sounds pretty utopian, right?
It does, doesn't it?
In this day and age.
Yeah, I think you're right.
Habermas himself, he actually worried that the mass media
Oh.
focused on, you know, entertainment and profit
Mhm.
was already, like, eroding the public sphere.
Even before the internet came along,
Oh, wow.
Like, he saw how easily it could shift.
From a space of, like, reasoned debate to like manipulation and control.
Right, and then social media enters the picture.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Promising to like democratize information and give everyone a voice.
Right, exactly.
Well,
But it often feels like it's doing the opposite.
All right.
It's like amplifying the very things that Habermas warned us about.
It's true.
Misinformation, divisive voices,
The echo chambers.
echo
Let's
chambers.
go back to the echo chambers.
It all comes back around,
Things
you know?
still circle.
It's like the tools that were meant to connect us are actually driving us further apart.
Okay, so the media landscape is changing.
Yeah.
The public sphere is like, in question.
And we're all like swimming in this sea of information.
But where does that leave us when it comes to actually like engaging in the political process?
That's the million-dollar question.
Right.
Like, it's so easy to feel overwhelmed by all this.
Powerless.
Yeah.
But
It's important to remember that we're not passive bystanders here.
okay.
You know, like technology can be used for good or for bad,
Right.
but we have choice.
Right. We have agents.
Like we have agency in how we engage with these platforms.
Exactly.
The information that we consume, the voices that we choose to amplify.
100%.
Right.
That's what's so interesting about this, you know? Digital media has opened up all these new avenues
Right.
for political participation.
Like connecting with like-minded individuals.
Right.
Organizing around issues that we care about.
Putting pressure on decision makers.
All things that were unimaginable a few decades ago, you know?
So it's not just about voting anymore.
Exactly.
Right. It's about like the online discussions, signing the petitions.
Maybe even joining a virtual protest or two.
Yeah, totally.
The pub square's gone virtual, you know?
Right. But is it the same?
That's the question.
That's the question.
For better or for worse, it's different, you know?
Okay, see, this is what I find so fascinating.
And like a little bit unnerving about this whole thing.
Yeah.
Right.
On the one hand, we have movements like Occupy Wall Street
Right.
or the Arab Spring,
Huge.
right? Social media played a key role in those
Yeah.
mobilizing people, shining a light on injustices.
It can be a powerful force for good, you know?
Absolutely.
Like, no doubt.
But then you have the flip side.
Right.
Right. You have things like the Cambridge Analytica scandal,
Exactly.
which showed how easily that same data could be used to manipulate voters.
For sure.
And it's not just elections.
No, not even close.
Right. Think about how, like, authoritarian regimes are using social media
Oh, yeah.
to control the narrative and, like, solidify their grip on power.
100%.
You know,
It's kind of scary, right? Like they're learning how to use the tools that were designed to promote openness and democracy.
Against those very ideals.
It's like a constant...
It's a game of cat and mouse.
Yes, like a game of cat and mouse.
All the time, you know.
So where do we go from here?
How do we navigate this, like, I don't know, this complex landscape
It's tough.
where the potential for both good and bad seems so, like, intertwined?
It's like we're all just trying to find our footing in this whole, I don't know, constantly shifting digital landscape.
It feels like the ground is always moving, right?
Yes. And I think that's actually a perfect segue.
Into, like, the heart of what we're really unpacking today, right?
Sure.
It's not just enough to, like, talk about the potential of, like, digital activism.
Right.
Or even, like, the downsides of data manipulation in the abstract.
We need to talk about what it all actually means for, you know, for you listening right now.
Yes.
Like, how do we, as individuals, how do we navigate this whole complex web of data, democracy, all of it, you know, digital engagement?
Yeah, you're right. It's so easy to get lost in the abstract.
Like, this isn't just some theoretical debate.
Right.
This is about how we live our lives, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Online and offline, it's all connected.
Okay, so let's get practical.
We've talked about those early hopes of a network democracy, right?
Mhm.
The internet is this, like, you know, great equalizer, giving everyone a voice, all of that.
Right.
But is that actually playing out how we thought it would?
Well, I think it's definitely more nuanced
Go.
than those, like, early optimists might have imagined, you know? Like, for every online campaign that actually leads to real-world change,
Right.
there are countless others that just kind of, like, you know...
They fizzle out.
Yeah, they fizzle out.
Lost in the churn of the internet, you know?
Right. It's like that saying, like, you know...
Just because you tweet it doesn't make it true.
Exactly.
Right.
100%.
So how do we tell the difference then, right?
Between, like, you know, meaningful online engagement
Right.
that actually translates into, like, real action and what's basically just, you know, digital noise.
That's the million-dollar question.
Right.
And there's no easy answer, unfortunately.
But one way to think about it
Right.
is the difference between what scholars call
Like connective action
Okay.
versus collective action.
Okay, break that down for me.
Okay.
So connective action is more like,
When you sign that online petition,
right.
you're kind of loosely connected to a cause, right?
Right. Yeah.
But it's mostly about expressing like your individual support. Collective action, though,
Okay.
that's more about like physically coming together with others.
Building a movement.
Okay.
Think protests, marches, that kind of thing.
So how does that then play out in like, the digital world?
Is it even possible to have that same kind of like collective power?
When everything's happening online.
It's a huge question.
Right.
And honestly, I think scholars are still trying to figure that out.
All right.
But here's where it gets really interesting.
Remember like the Obama 2008 campaign?
Oh, yeah.
Groundbreaking.
They really were like ahead of their time.
Oh, yeah. And their use of data and technology.
Right.
And not just to like target voters, but to listen to them.
To personalize their message, to mobilize support.
It was like
it changed the game.
the whole yes, we can
Yeah.
energy, right?
Exactly.
And everyone felt like they were a part of something.
Everyone was a part of it.
Bigger than themselves.
Right.
But
This is a big but.
there's a flip side, right? We talked about Cambridge Analytica,
Right.
how they use data to like potentially influence elections.
Right.
That's the dark side of this whole, data-driven campaigning thing.
And it's not just happening in elections either, right?
Oh, no, not even close.
Like, think about how easily we get sucked into these, like, rabbit holes of online content.
All the time.
Right. Like, those algorithms are designed to keep us engaged, right? Even if it means, like, feeding us information that just confirms our biases.
And makes us more extreme in our views,
Totally. And it's like, almost like our emotions are being weaponized.
It's true.
And that's not by accident. Like, this is deliberate.
Okay.
And this is where it gets, I think, a little scary.
Okay.
Because now, like, you have authoritarian regimes. They've got onto this, They're using social media not just to censor dissenting voices,
Right.
but to, like, flood the space with so much propaganda, so much misinformation.
That it's almost impossible to even know what to believe anymore.
Yeah.
Right.
So it's not just about the information itself. It's about
the feeling.
the feeling.
Exactly.
How it makes you feel.
100%.
How it shapes your perception of the world.
And that's what's dangerous.
It's really dangerous if we're not careful.
If we're not careful, yeah.
And, this kind of ties into this whole idea
Oh, yeah?
of what some scholars call effective publics,
Okay.
which is basically this idea
Right.
that that online communities, they're often formed
Mm-hmm.
and mobilized.
Around like shared emotion,
Okay.
identities,
Yeah.
rather than like just purely rational argument.
Okay, give me a real world example of that.
Okay, so think about like,
Those viral moments that grip the internet for like a week,
right.
Like, remember when Ed Miliband, who was a British politician?
He was photographed like awkwardly eating a bacon sandwich.
Yes, I remember this.
It seems so trivial, right?
It does.
But it became this whole media spectacle.
Oh my gosh, it was crazy. People were like dissecting his every bite.
I know.
Like using it to judge his character, his fitness to lead a country.
It's like a bacon sandwich, really.
It's wild.
Wild. It's wild.
But that's the power of like effective publics at play.
Right, so it's not always about like,
It's not always about logic.
the logic, the
reason. It's tapping into those gut reactions,
Right.
those visceral responses.
that can just spread like wildfire online.
Okay, so where does this leave us?
Like we're all trying to make sense of this, like constantly evolving landscape, right?
Mm-hmm.
Where the lines between like information, entertainment, manipulation, it's all so blurry now.
It really is.
What's the takeaway? Like if someone's listening to this, right?
Yeah.
Maybe they're feeling a little overwhelmed.
A little unsure of what to do.
Yeah.
What do we do?
Yeah, no, I think that's a totally understandable way to feel.
But here's the thing.
Okay.
Awareness is the first step, right? By understanding the forces that are at play here. How data is being used, how our emotions are being leveraged, all of that.
We can start to navigate this landscape more critically, more consciously.
So it's about being informed, but also about being discerning, right?
100%, yeah.
It's not just like passively consuming,
Right.
whatever pops up on our screen.
It's about actively seeking out, like,
Yes.
diverse perspectives, questioning what we see, what we hear,
Critically engaging.
being wary of anything that seems designed to, like,
Totally.
play on our emotions, all of that.
I think that's so key. And honestly,
Don't underestimate the power of, like, offline action, too.
right,
Talk to people who hold different views than you.
right.
Get involved in your local community.
Support organizations that are, fighting for things you believe in.
Because real change, lasting change,
Yeah.
it often starts offline.
Right. In those like face-to-face interactions.
It's all about those connections.
Yes, where you can actually build trust,
Exactly.
find common ground.
Yeah. Work together to actually, create a better future.
It's not always easy, but it's so important.
That's such an important reminder because it is so easy to get caught up in, the digital world
100%.
and all of that. But ultimately, democracy, it's about more than just,
Clicks and likes, right.
it's about real engagement.
It's about engaging with the world around us.
Yes.
Having those, sometimes difficult conversations.
And working together to build a society that, actually reflects our values.
I love that.
So as you go about your day to day,
think about, the information that you're encountering,
Yeah.
the choices that you're making online, and how it all connects back.
and the bigger picture of democracy,
In the digital age,
it's all connected.
because your voice, your actions, they all matter.
They do.
And that, I think, is a pretty good note to end on.
Thanks for taking this deep dive with us.
This was a good one.
It's been quite a journey.
It has.
And
Just remember, right? In a world that is awash in information,
so much information.
knowledge is power.
That's the truth.
Stay curious, stay engaged.
And keep asking those tough questions.
Love it.